Hi, everyone. I am Sam Osterhout. I am the executive producer here at Lincoln Square. And we are going into another election tomorrow, in case you haven't noticed. And right after, we're going to start looking at the midterms. And I am so excited to be joined by David Daley, one of the leading voices in America on how the rules of our democracy are being rewritten, and often in ways that voters never see. He's a senior fellow at Fair Vote and the author of several acclaimed books, incling Ratfucked.
Oh, you said it. All right.
Yeah, of course. This is
All
something
right.
to say anything. How Your Vote Doesn't Count and Unrigged, How Americans Are Battling Back to Save Democracy. And I believe this is your most recent anti-democratic, Inside the Far Right's 50-year plot to control American elections. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Honored to be here. Thanks for having me, Sam.
So I want to. There's so much to talk about. I mean, I'm going to throw this up one more time. The 50-year plot to control American elections. I kind of want to start there. Tell us about this 50-year plot. Don't give away the ending.
I wish I knew the ending.
I know. So. I want to tie this in first to a piece you wrote in The Nation about 2 weeks ago, where I don't know if it's where you coined the phrase Robert's mandering, but I loved it.
I'm trying to make it popular.
So tell us what Robert's mandering is.
Well, we've been calling it gerrymandering for the last 200 years, right? We've been pinning this on poor Elbridge Gerry, the old founding father who was governor of Massachusetts when his party redrew those state Senate districts around Boston and gave rise to the word gerrymandering. Although what's happening right now has no resemblance to what was happening back then. It has no resemblance to the gerrymanders of even 15 or 20 years ago. This is an entirely new thing. It is high tech and driven by sophisticated computer models and voluminous voter data. But most importantly, it has been greenlit by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. John Roberts is the person who we can thank or blame for everything that is happening around the country. We can blame John Roberts for the gerrymanders that were enacted in 2021 by both parties, Democrats and Republicans alike, nearly a maximally gerrymandered congressional map. And we can blame him for the unprecedented mid-decade gerrymandering that is taking place right now. See, I still call it gerrymandering. I've got to start calling it Robert's mandering. Because what happened here was lower courts had this figured out. At the end of last decade, the Republican gerrymanders, and the Democratic gerrymander in Maryland, but the Republican ones in North Carolina, Wisconsin, Michigan, Florida, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, all of these, federal judges appointed by presidents of both parties looked at this and they said, boy, we have all the tools we need to decide when a gerrymander goes too far. And if we don't fix this, no one else will, because the entire point of gerrymandering is to lock the political process in states and in Congress away from the ballot box and the voters. So an independent, fair-minded judiciary is crucial to returning power to the voters. And John Roberts looked at this and said, nah, I'm not really interested in an independent judiciary. I'm not interested in a fair-minded judiciary. John Roberts' goal in all of these democracy cases for the last dozen years has been to put his thumb on the scale for the Republican Party. That is why he is on the Supreme Court. And it's what the conservative supermajority delivers in case after case. And so in this case from 2019, the Rucho case out of North Carolina, right, John Roberts says, not only am I going to upend what the federal courts have done, I'm going to close the federal courts forever to partisan gerrymandering claims. And if you've seen Ghostbusters, right, it's just been Halloween. We've all seen Ghostbusters. There's that moment where, Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd are like, don't release the containment packs. Because they've sucked up all of the evil powers and the evildoers, and they've got them safe and sound. And the bad men who, think they're in charge of the rules say, no, let them out. And the bad things happen. And John Roberts, by saying there will be no federal police no one looking out for voters. What happens are these gerrymanders that just cannot be stopped. And we are living in John Roberts' America.
So I kind of want to understand Rucho just a little bit more
Sure.
clearly. So ultimately, who was filing claim against these partisan gerrymanders, and to what end, or what cause? What was the harm?
The harm in this case, this case was brought by voters in Common Cause in North Carolina
Mm-hmm.
against the North Carolina legislature for having gerrymandered. In this case, both over the course of the decade were litigated: the congressional map as well as the state legislative map. And Republicans had gerrymandered themselves a 10-3 advantage in North Carolina's congressional delegation. In North Carolina, it's a 7-6 state at the time, right? It's since picked up a 14th. Wow. It's since picked up a 14th seat, and Republicans have now drawn an 11-3 map there. But the lower courts agreed, and they said there's all of these statistical measures, and by all accounts, by every account, any way you look at this, whether you're looking at the eyewitness testimony of those who were involved, whether you're looking at the, draft maps, whether you're looking at the statistical data that shows what they've done, this is a partisan gerrymander. This is bad, and this, violates, various, First and 14th Amendment protections that voters have to assure themselves of free and fair elections and the right to assemble. And John Roberts says, no, that is not the case. These standards don't add up. These standards are political. These standards, a common man on the street's going to look at this and say, you're putting your hand on the party, on the scale for, party X or party Y. And they're going to say that, and on top of that, he said partisan gerrymandering is a political issue. That's simply the way it is. So the courts can't be involved in solving political issues. They have to be solved in the political process. Well, you can't solve partisan gerrymandering through the political process. The entire point of it is that politicians are trying to entrench themselves in power.
Right.
The gerrymander is undefeated. And so by doing this, John Roberts really ensured that all of these gerrymanders would continue. He made it possible that state Supreme Courts could conceivably step up and fix this. The trouble is the conservative state Supreme Courts in Texas and Florida aren't going to fix this.
Right.
And when a Democratic court in North Carolina did go ahead and fix it, as soon as Republicans took over that court, they reversed the decision and they dropped in a new gerrymandered map. So, these are Roberts manders.
Right. They're Roberts manders. And go ahead.
John Roberts owns this. The Chief Justice really, in this case, failed the nation. And John Roberts likes to think of himself as, or be portrayed, and the media continues to do this, right? John Roberts is a moderate conservative. He's an institutionalist. He's an umpire calling balls and strikes. We have to think of John Roberts quite differently. John Roberts is the most successful Republican politician and political operative of his generation. If you look at where the court was in 2005 when John Roberts came on and where it is now, what Republicans have won through the courts that they could never win through the political process, whether you're talking about reproductive rights, the regulatory state, campaign finance, voting rights, whether or not, President Trump is a king who can fire who he would like at will. John Roberts has moved the nation further to the right than perhaps anybody in American history.
And I think the simple math of this is worth sort of restating, that the Democrats or one party can win 60% of the votes and lose seats. And that's not how any of this is meant to work, right? And it seems absurd on the face that you would just allow a party that is trying to lock in single party rule to sort of self-govern or do the right thing when it has never historically done that. I want, you've sounded the alarm over and over and over and over and over. You say that by some counts, up to a dozen seats, House seats, could flip just purely by remapping before a vote is even cast. Can you explain how that works and maybe where we're most vulnerable?
Sure. These mid-decade partisan gerrymanders underway right now are really going to add up, and they're going to add up to the benefit of the Republican Party. They currently hold a 3-seat advantage in the U.S. House. Democrats entered this year thinking they would need to flip 3 seats to take control of the chamber. Then Donald Trump calls Texas and he says, give me 5 more seats. And Texas goes ahead and they remap in such a way that gives Donald Trump and the Republican Party 5 more seats. So when Gavin Newsom in California got involved, and California said, well, if you're going to do that, we're going to retaliate. And we are going to put our commission on hold, and we're going to draw a map that gives Democrats 5 more seats here. So California and Texas, and I imagine that the California initiative, all polls show that's going to pass tomorrow.
Yeah.
Those 2 states are going to cancel each other out. The trouble for Democrats is they don't have anywhere else to go after that, and Republicans have got a lot of room left. They have already remapped in Missouri, gaining a seat, fracturing Kansas City, a historically Black district there, into 3 parts. They have already remapped in North Carolina, pushing a 10-4 map into an 11-3 map. There is a new map underway in Ohio. There's a political process there, but it's going to result in 2 more Republican seats there, pushing a 10-5 map to a 12-3. So that's 4. Indiana right now is looking at 1, possibly 2 seats there. Kansas is looking at remapping. Florida, Ron DeSantis has said he can get anywhere from 3 to 5 seats through a mid-decade process. I don't think he can get to 5, but 2 or 3 certainly seems entirely possible. You could still see remapping happen in Kentucky. It's not impossible that this happens again in New Hampshire. It starts to add up. You could get somewhere, I think, from 10 to 12 seats right there. And then there's the Calais case, the voting rights case out of Louisiana that the court is deliberating right now. It heard oral arguments in the middle of last month. That has to do with whether or not it's constitutional to draw majority-minority seats. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. If the court upends what's left of Section 2, and if they do this in time for those states to draw new maps, and if you know John Roberts, you can probably guess that he'll come through on this sometime in January, early February, you could see anywhere from an additional 12 to 19 seats across the South redrawn. So these are the seats currently held by Black Democrats in Georgia, the 2 in Alabama, the 2 in Louisiana, Mississippi, South Carolina, the Memphis, Tennessee district. You could go back into Georgia. You could go back into Texas. You could go back into Florida. This would probably put the midterms beyond most any wave. If you're beginning to look at 10 to 12 seats through partisan gerrymandering, call it on the low side, 10 to 12 seats through the end of Section 2, plus the 3 that Republicans already have. There's just not that many competitive target seats left if you've got to flip 25. That becomes a very, very tall road. It could lock the House away for Republicans for some time.
So I want to talk about that. I think, if Voting Rights Act is essentially gutted, which it really does look like it's going to be, right? Mm-hmm. What does our democracy look like in 10, 20 years?
I think it's bleak. I think the Voting Rights Act is what made us a democracy. I think we have to really pay tribute to this is the most important piece of civil rights legislation that the country's ever seen. It's what breathed life into the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, the Reconstruction Amendments to the Constitution after the Civil War. That, in many ways, it's the Voting Rights Act and those Reconstruction Amendments that are the true founding texts of what American democracy can be. The question of whether a multiracial nation can become a multiracial democracy. And John Roberts has made it his life's work to undermine that, whether as a young aide in the Reagan Justice Department in 1982, working against the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act, or through all of these cases on the court, from Shelby County undermining preclearance to the Brnovich case, which took the first whack at Section 2, and then Rucho, and now with Calais. So we will see what this court does, but I think if these protections disappear, you are looking at a return of one-party white rule across much of the South that would be extraordinarily difficult to interrupt, and that those state legislatures would then largely have free rein to go ahead and install all kinds of new voting suppression measures that courts and voters would not have a whole lot of say over. I'm a lot of fun at parties. I think it's a dark future if this happens, and one that we have to be prepared for, and that we have to be beginning to think about what a new civil rights movement looks like and how we begin to fight back, because there was, after the Reconstruction amendments passed, there was 90 years of Jim Crow until the Voting Rights Act. And then we've had 60 years of the Voting Rights Act. And, I don't know what it will look like, but it took the civil rights movement, it took John Lewis, it took all of these American heroes of democracy working their entire lives, sometimes lives that were lost, to win a multiracial democracy. And it's quite possible that this is going to be the fight of our lifetime again.
Yeah. Couple of things. First is that, we've talked to some who say that, the Voting Rights Act decision might not have an impact on the midterms coming up. It might not be called out in time or decided in time. It looks like it could be, though. But that in and of itself, between the redistricting or the Roberts mandering and the VRA being gutted, it is a massive project.
Yeah.
It's a totally rejiggering of states, right?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I think it's wishful thinking to think that they're not going to come down with this decision. They asked for this case, right? They
Right.
asked that this case be re-argued and rebriefed along specific constitutional lines. Brett Kavanaugh, back in the Alabama case a couple of years ago, dropped the breadcrumbs of exactly what he wanted in order to declare that racism was over and time was up for Section 2 when it comes to redistricting. And I compare it to the Citizens United case, which had a very similar path. This was a case that was re-argued and rebriefed along the lines that the conservatives in the court wanted. It was heard early in the session, and the decision was then handed down in late January. So there is no requirement that this court wait until the end of June to hand down this decision. They are likely arguing about it right now, and I would imagine that Republicans being Republicans, there are probably maps ready and waiting in state capitol drawers in Montgomery and in Jackson and in Atlanta, in Columbia, in preparation for this. The same way that all of these laws were ready and waiting after Shelby County, just in case the court got rid of Section 5, right? Which might have been an indication to the court that things hadn't changed that much in the South if they were the honest and fair-minded callers of bills and strikes.
Sure, if they were coming at it earnestly. But so a couple of questions, and I want to eventually get to. I know there's no quick and easy solutions. You can't just say call your congressman. But we'll get there. But first, I want to talk just a little bit about some perhaps unforeseen or knock-on effects of rulings like this and of redistricting, and particularly of single party rule. And the first is it has an effect like when our electeds can select their voters rather than vice versa. It seems like it would have a kind of a massive emotional or psychological effect on voters and the electorate itself. Do you see this just being disenfranchised to some degree having a stifling effect on participation in our democracy?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, John Adams talked about the U.S. House being a perfect representation of the people in miniature, and we are so impossibly far away from that. This is supposed to be the body that's closest to the people. Instead, it's completely untouchable. I've never voted in a meaningful competitive election for Congress in the 30 plus years I've been voting. And I would imagine I'm not the only one. In 2024, there were 37 competitive races in this country out of 435 seats. And by competitive, I mean within 5 percentage points.
Wow.
So that means the results were essentially all but preordained in about 91% of all races. That is a mockery of representative democracy. And what it means is that all of the decisions that matter in non-competitive districts get pushed into party primaries. Most people can't vote in party primaries because they are closed. They are locked down to just that side. They tend to happen when no one's paying attention over the summer. They tend to be extraordinarily low turnout. And because those are the important races, you might have 11 or 12 candidates in them.
Right.
So somebody can win these races, as has happened, with 17, 18, 19% of the vote. And then you coast into office because it's a non-competitive seat. And so you end up with the most extreme of the extreme being pushed into office that really don't represent these districts at all, but they can't lose. And that is very bad for our politics. As we look at shutdowns in Washington, as we look at gridlock and polarization, as we look at all of the issues that Americans fairly widely and broadly agree upon, that we still can't get any action on. And so much of this has to do with how we elect our representatives and the kinds of districts that they come from.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, a primary in a bright red district, the brightest red wins the primary and then goes, as you say, into the election. I also, my next question about knock-on effects has to do with this seems so conspiratorial. I'm just going to throw that out there, but knowing Roberts and knowing this particular court, it doesn't seem to be just about electoral politics. It seems to be about policy and about faith and about power and all of these things, right? And do you see a world in which, because look, it's not just the House that's getting gerrymandered, right? It's state houses. If you can pick up 35 states, or is it 36, you can have a constitutional convention. Do you see this as a broader plan or broader outline of just structural change, structural long-term or permanent change in our governance, our policy?
I think that the architect of so much of the strategy that we're looking at right now is Leonard Leo.
Yes.
The court whisperer from the Federalist Society, who now controls, a dark money octopus, upwards of $1.6 billion. And he has his hands in just about everything on the right, from all of the dark money groups that are operating to all of the state groups that are operating. He's working in culture right now, right? I mean, if you turn on a certain faith and family, films that you're streaming, they might have been made by Leonard Leo. I mean, Leonard Leo might have a hand even in those. It's everywhere. And Leonard Leo, in many ways, selected this bench. Leonard Leo and the Republican state leadership committee and the various judicial fairness initiatives have been working together on judges at the state level. They've been working, on electing chief justices in states, attorneys general. So all of, it does sound conspiratorial, but in some ways they're just doing electoral politics.
Sure.
In a really advanced and serious way. And they don't ever intend to lose. And, would only that the other side play electoral politics maybe in the same way. There comes a time when we can, shake our fists at Leonard Leo all we want. He's not been doing this in secret. He's been doing this in public over the course of decades. The redistricting that happened in 2010, Karl Rove wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, and he laid the entire thing out, down to the specific small towns where controls of state legislatures would be decided, in which he said will allow Republicans to redraw Congress for a decade. Like, right. Republicans had to win 107 state legislative districts in 16 states to pull this off back in 2010. This is just, basic electoral politics in some ways. There are more of us than there are of them, but we keep losing because we don't understand the crucial races we have to be fighting in and competing in the same way that the right does. These state legislative seats, these state Supreme Court seats, they are crucial to drawing the rules, to creating the rules at the next level of American politics. And until Democrats really understand this and begin that process of building power from the ground up slowly and institutionally, it's a really unsatisfying answer I have to give people, because this is a long-term process and we've failed at it for so long that in many ways it's starting at the beginning. And, I'm outlining a process that may take the rest of my lifetime, right? But, we could start now.
Well, I mean, either we start now or we don't start. I mean, your book, Anti-Democratic Inside the Right's 50-Year Plot to Control American Elections, 50-year plot. That's sort of the headline there. This is, and, I'm reading, I interviewed Gareth Gore, who wrote this book, Opus.
Opus, that's great.
Amazing, but I'm just getting to the Leonard Leo part. And it is, they are financed and they are so forward looking, and they will take short-term losses in exchange for long-term gain.
100%.
And the Democrats, do we have that in us?
We're too concerned about who's going to win the White House, right? I mean, we're not thinking about these local races in the right long-term systematic way of how you build power and how you sustain it. And the others, it's not easy because the other side is trying to win these races and lock us out.
Right.
So, I'm not suggesting that any of this is easy. But I'm suggesting that the only way out is to win elections in all of these places where Democrats have not been able to do this. And, the road for Democrats can't gerrymander their way out of this problem. No. They don't control enough states to do it. The math doesn't math, as my 12-year-old might say. Right? It's not going to work. So we have to find a way to identify the districts where we can win and then focus on them in a really brutal, hardcore way. And there's enough of them that if it's not easy, probably have to run the board in really difficult territory. But the stakes are high. These races have to be funded. There's an election underway tomorrow in Pennsylvania, which is essentially over the future of the state Supreme Court. I'm not hearing a whole lot about that election. The right is really, really organized on that. If they can take Pennsylvania's state Supreme Court back, many bets are off, especially when it comes to litigating the 2028 presidential election. So we have to really think about this, and the road forward is only going to get harder. Again, I'm really funded parties. The 2030 reapportionment that follows the census, Democrats are going to lose seats in blue states. 4 seats are going to go away from California because of population change.
Right.
2 are going to leave New York. Minnesota, Rhode Island, Illinois, Wisconsin. These seats are going from blue and purple states to Texas, to Florida, to Arizona, to North Carolina. And electoral votes go with them. So the road to winning the House is difficult. The road to winning the White House in 2032 is going to be much tougher because of the way the Electoral College math will add up once those seats move. And the Democratic Party needs to be thinking really systematically about how they're going to win elections given this math.
Okay, so to wind up, and so since we've solved all of these problems,
let's drink.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking that myself. What's something that our audience can do or should keep an eye on or educate themselves on? And one thing I will say is read the book.
Oh, thank you.
Read that book because we get in the chat all the time. I'm sick of hearing this stuff. What can I do? And actually becoming educated is one thing that you actually can do. You need to know what's happening. So that's the first thing. What's another thing?
We need a plan, right? I mean, we need to be talking to all of our friends, our family, our neighbors about how these structures have to change. We must be thinking, because we will take back power at some point in time, right? We had a trifecta in 2021.
Right.
What did we do with it? We squandered that trifecta. So the next time we have power, we need lawmakers who are ready to go with a plan that changes and reforms the U.S. Supreme Court, that adds justices, that enforces an ethics code, that it puts term limits on the court, that perhaps shrinks the kinds of cases that it can decide. There's lots of things that Congress can do to bring the court back in line. Has to happen. We have to be thinking about how we reform the U.S. House. And I think the very best way to do this would be through a proportional representation. The plan that Don Beyer and Jamie Raskin have talked about, the Fair Representation Act, which would, end single-member winner-take-all districts that can be gerrymandered by one side to take every seat. Proportional, larger multi-member seats. Use ranked choice voting to elect members. You would have a swing district, every district in the country. We'd elect much more sensible people. We could change American politics by fixing the House, by fixing the courts. But these are difficult battles. And in order to win them, you've got to have a mandate from the American people, which means that all of us have got to be talking about this. This has to be what we hold our lawmakers to. What are you going to do if you take power to fix the big institutional structural questions? Boring, wonky, the most important thing we have to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's worth mentioning that, single party rule hurts red states as well. It's not good for literally anyone when you have no pushback on any idea, and the only ideas that make it through are the furthest to the right or the furthest to the left even.
Exactly.
You have to have some debate. Well, David Daley, I really appreciate you coming on. I feel like we could have gone on for forever and ever.
I think I did go on forever and ever. I'm sorry.
No. Well, I'm going to have you to my holiday party. We're going to drink. It's going to be wonderful.
I hope you have wine.
I will. We will all wine and drink wine as well. I want to throw up a couple of your books. Make sure this one was really incredible. And this is the latest book. David Daley, thank you for joining. Really appreciate you.
A pleasure. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate you. Thanks.
See you next time. Thanks, everybody.